I'm Tim Grieve. I'm the executive editor of Protocol. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks to Microsoft Azure for sponsoring our discussion of the evolution of gaming. We launched Protocol 9 months ago based on the conviction that tech is a power center as consequential as any nation's capital, and we set out to cover it like one, focusing on the people, power, and politics that both infuse and drive the tech industry. Now, to a lot of folks, those might seem like big words when applied to gaming, but the people on this call know better. Gaming is a $160 billion business worldwide, and like everything else right now, the shape of it is changing rapidly with new consoles, cloud gaming, the uncertain effects of a global pandemic, innovative technologies, app store wars, more on that today, and fresh business models all shifting the landscape right before our eyes. Seth Schiesel covers this story day in and day out for Protocol, and now in a weekly newsletter he's writing with Schiesel. It's called, wait for it, Protocol Gaming. And if you aren't yet getting it, please take a moment to sign up at protocol.com/newsletters. In a few moments, Seth will lead a discussion with a group of leaders who live and breathe gaming and are driving its future. And one of those is the one I want to introduce first, and that's James Gewirtzman, GM of Gaming Cloud for our sponsor, Microsoft. James leads the part of the business that provides cloud services to game developers and publishers, a role that grew out of Microsoft's acquisition of PlayFab, where he was founder and CEO. Suffice it to say, he knows this world. James, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. I know Microsoft has had a big couple of months, obviously, with the release of the new flight simulator and the new Xbox console, but I know these things aren't things that just happen overnight. Can you share a bit about the journey Microsoft has been on and how you see the gaming landscape today?
Yeah, well, I think obviously the big evolution in sort of my world is the role of cloud and how that's been starting to take more and more of an impact on what we're doing in the gaming space. And so obviously we just launched a big console, and that's obviously a big news. But sort of behind the scenes, I think we've been sort of working to be investing a lot more on our evolution of cloud services in gaming. And that's, they acquired PlayFab a few years ago to sort of begin this journey of taking our experience in gaming on Xbox and our experience obviously in Azure and cloud services. And one of our ambitions really is to create sort of an entertainment cloud of the future tailored for the needs of sort of real-time games, high latency, consumer scale, that the game space needs. And in some ways, this talk I'm giving with you today, these comments, is sort of like a bit of a coming out party, because one of the big things we've done in the last few months is we've created a brand new organization at Microsoft called in Microsoft parlance, the gaming vertical or kind of gaming cloud group that I'm now the general manager for. And this is specifically focused on making sure that we have the best possible tools and services for the game environment. And so, we're putting a lot more energy in this space. I like to joke that Azure is sort of like the biggest cloud for gaming you haven't heard of. We tend to have a reputation, I think, of being very Fortune 500 focused or very enterprise focused. And yet, because of our first party studios, we're hosting Minecraft and Gears of War and Halo. And we also have a lot of other outside developers like id Software and No Man's Sky and others all using our services to build and operate their games. And so, with this sort of my comments today and sort of our investments we're making, we're hoping to really put ourselves more out in the sort of game developer community as being, a great provider for cloud services. And so one thing I wanted to share today is sort of 5 of the things that I'm thinking about that are the problems that I see in the game industry that we're focusing on and the solutions we're trying to provide at Microsoft. And maybe that'll provide some interesting backdrop for the panel discussion with us coming up. And so from my perspective, there are 5 big problems that developers are facing. One of them is I think we're all trying to accelerate our content production and make our game production pipeline sort of more efficient. And part of that is using machine learning and AI to kind of introduce new automated tools of content delivery. Part of it is dealing with the whole working from home and COVID reality, which is that, doing things on-prem on desktops in the office isn't really viable anymore. So we're making investments to help move game production to the cloud. We talked about our flight simulator game. That for us is a real watershed game because so much of the content for that is built with machine learning off of, satellite imagery, which is sort of a pretty watershed thing. Second is community and the fact that more and more games, I think, are becoming communities. It's no longer enough to just build a game and ship it and, have players be done 10 hours later. Games want to be Fortnite. They want to be games that have these evergreen multi-year experiences, a combination of live ops and player-to-player interaction. And so, providing great tools and services for multiplayer and not just multiplayer tech like matchmaking and lobbies, but also anti-toxicity, anti-harassment, anti-cheating, that kind of thing. Third is knowing your players and analytics and data. Who are your players? What do they want? You'd be able to do A/B testing to really understand that community. Fourth is expanding your player lifetime value. Everyone, now that we're spending more and more money and effort acquiring our players, how do we grow the value through higher engagement, higher retention, higher monetization? A lot of that is live ops, and live ops is my kind of bread and butter from the PlayFab days, but now increasingly it's sort of a broader set of services we can offer there. And the fifth one is acquiring new players. And how do you not just do things like performance marketing to sort of acquire players to your games, but social and viral hooks, and then also discovery. How do you do better discovery within things like Game Pass on our side, or Xbox App Store on our side, or other app stores? I think those are all kind of the things we look at. We also see changes happening in the very nature of the platforms themselves. So, it's no longer just Xbox and iOS and Android and PC and those kinds of platforms. On the panel today, I know we have Frederick, from Manticore. We have things like Roblox and Minecraft. In my mind, games like these are themselves the next generation of platforms. And when we talk about cloud platforms, it's not just like xCloud and Stadia now. It is things like Minecraft and Manticore and Minecraft. These are virtual consoles that live in the cloud that are delivering game experiences on every device, web browsers, dedicated clients, and so on. So it's really some really neat changes happening, some neat shifts. I'm excited to see the panel and their comments and where things are evolving to. We're very excited to be, you'll be seeing more from us in coming months from Microsoft on what we're doing with Azure to be more friendly for game developers. We're streamlining a lot of the way we do deals and trying to make our whole commercial process more transparent, because I think it's been very focused on Fortune 500s and not enough on the needs of sort of self-serve organic game development. And so when we're done here, I'd love to have people feel free to reach out to me if you want to learn more and or explore what we can do together. So that's my comments. Thank you very much. I'm excited for the panel.
And hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces and new ones in the participant list. So it's great having everybody here. And thanks, of course, to our sponsor, Microsoft Azure. For those of you who are attending, please do ask questions using the Q&A function in Zoom. We will get to as many of those as we can. And of course, thanks to our speakers, who I'll introduce in a little bit more detail in just a moment. Also want to thank Protocol. Tim and the entire team at Protocol for recognizing just how central gaming has become, not just within the technology universe, not just to the strategies of the tech giants, but to understanding how billions of people in every country are engaging with gaming as a prime form of entertainment, but also really a vector to use technology, to build communities, and focus on what's really important, which is, of course, human relationships. I think everyone on this panel would agree that the media landscape around the gaming industry could use some more development, and Protocol really does deserve some credit, a lot of credit for leaning into that. And they've done that at just the right time, right? The term inflection point is obviously overused, but I do think that we will look back at 2020 as a real moment of additional acceleration, if you will, for gaming, not just as a business, but as a real force in our overall culture. At the beginning of this call, Tim mentioned that gaming is a $160 billion business, and those were the estimates just a few months ago. And it looks this year like we might get close to about 200 billion total global spend if we include hardware. So this industry is obviously exploding. Now, let's be fair. Part of that is clearly COVID and quarantine. Of course, no one wants to profit off of or grow as a result of a situation that has caused so much devastation and really, and difficulties for so many people. But it's clear that gaming has provided a respite and an outlet for millions of people during this difficult time, even as other forms of entertainment, like say traditional televised sports, have continued to decline. Gaming has accelerated, obviously, but it's also clear that COVID has only accelerated fundamental demographic, cultural, and technical changes that were already propelling this industry. Not least, of course, just last week, we opened a new console generation with new PlayStations and Xboxes. And we will certainly come to that with our amazing panel, who I will now introduce. So alphabetically by last name, we have Daniel Alegre, the president of Activision Blizzard. Daniel just joined Activision Blizzard this year from Google, where he was for 16 years, most recently running their global retail business. We have Frank Azor, the chief architect of gaming solutions and marketing at AMD, which seems to be riding high right now in a lot of ways. Previously, Frank was a co-founder of Alienware, one of the very first makers of specialty gaming PCs. Dell acquired Alienware, and Frank then ran the gaming segment at Dell before joining AMD last year. Frédéric Descamps, co-founder and CEO of Manticore Games, which we already heard a little bit about, which is developing a really innovative platform to help democratize game development, lower the barrier to entry to make great games, and give more people the tools to make high quality entertainment products. Now, Samantha Ryan has perhaps the deepest experience on this panel actually making big budget games. Samantha is currently Senior Vice President at Electronic Arts, overseeing multiple studios, including BioWare and Maxis. BioWare is legendary for their role-playing games. Maxis makes The Sims, as well as Motive Studios that Samantha also oversees. Previously, Samantha occupied senior executive roles at Warner Brothers, their game unit, and at Monolith Productions. And of course, we have Vivek Sharma. Vivek is vice president at a little company called Facebook and the head of Facebook Gaming. Vivek helps oversee and run Facebook's large live streaming operation, which recently absorbed Microsoft's Mixer, and is also involved with Facebook's Instant Games platform, which reaches a lot of people. So we're going to open up with just a broad introduction. I'm going to ask each of you on the panel to take just a couple of minutes and give us your overall perspective on what you think the most important changes and shifts are that are driving the growth of gaming. And also tell us a little bit about how you and your company are positioning themselves to take advantage and accelerate those changes. This time we will go alphabetical by company. And of course, that makes Daniel first yet again. That's what happens when you have the double A going on. So yeah, Daniel from Activision Blizzard, please start us off here.
Great. Well, thanks, Seth, and thank you for Protocol for having us all. I really appreciate the time. And yes, I'm used to always being called first. Teachers always defaulted by alphabet. So, look, I think some of the biggest changes that I'm seeing, I saw it obviously in my time at Google, and I'm definitely seeing it now happening in gaming. And the two biggest areas that I see are first, the fact that players are expecting to be able to play the best games in whatever means that they want, whether it's on console, whether it's on PC, or whether it's on mobile. And it used to be that mobile was for games like Candy Crush, but when we launched Call of Duty Mobile, for instance, it was just absolutely incredible, the amount of interest and the immediate downloads that we got. And it's both new players who want to experience it, who may not have had PCs or consoles, particularly in developing nations, but also from existing players pre-COVID and also post-COVID, who may be on the run and they want to continue playing and pick up where they left off. So the player expectation really is cross-platform. And a trend that was already happening that I think is accentuated even more now is the social nature of games. The fact that it is no longer a one-to-one interaction, player versus the gaming company, but really the social nature of it. And particularly in these times of COVID, where people want to have much more human interaction and ways to engage with other players and find affinity groups, I think that is clearly accelerating. And it's accelerating, in my mind, in a very, very positive way, because it's not only broadening the horizon of potential friends you have, but also broadening it on a global basis, because games really are now becoming truly global and global at scale. So I think from a social aspect perspective, the fact that we're breaking down international barriers and having people being able to interact and interact very deeply, not just through text, but through video and getting to know net new people, I think is something that's very positive, not only for gaming, but also for society.
And how does that change how Activision Blizzard needs to run its business?
So what we're doing is we're investing very heavily on two fronts. One is we are porting our games onto mobile. I mentioned Call of Duty Mobile as an example, and we have other investments that we have going on to ensure that our key franchises are available on mobile. And one, it's for our existing player base who wants to interact on mobile, but also just expanding the funnel and the horizon of potential players. who have heard of our IP, but may not have had the access to them. I think that's one. And the other one is the social features that we are putting into our games and enabling. I'm wearing my my Overwatch T-shirt today, and how teams can play PvP and have that sense of community is something that we're building. We've had, and we're building even richer interactions into each of our games.
Now, Frank, coming to you. Daniel has mentioned the importance of cross-platform, various aspects of the game business, and AMD does play, so to speak, across different parts of the game business. Obviously a leader, one of the leaders in the PC side, and then obviously provides silicon to both Microsoft and Sony for their new consoles. So what's your overall perspective on what's going on out there and how AMD is positioning itself?
Well, I agree with what Daniel shared in his observations around the industry. A cross-platform has been a dream, at least of mine, for the industry for a long time. And for it to finally start materializing, it's really exciting to see happen. We're at AMD, we're trying to help power that, and we're doing so successfully in putting our gaming technologies, whether it be our high-performance CPUs or our high-performance graphics, into pretty much every component, every solution within the entire ecosystem, whether it be in the cloud. We have solutions that are powering games in the cloud. We have our PC solutions, of course. So we actually just recently introduced the world's best gaming processor with our Ryzen 5000 series. And today, actually, timely enough, our latest generation Radeon RX 6000 graphics cards went live, and they sold out very quickly. Like every gaming device has been selling out recently, and they've been an incredible success for us. But beyond the PC, we're also powering the brand new Xbox and the brand new PlayStation as well. And we have a partnership with Samsung on the mobile side. So throughout the entire ecosystem that Daniel references, we have our technology that is powering where these games are being played. And in a lot of cases, the same core architecture is being leveraged across that entire ecosystem. So for example, these graphics cards that we launched today for the PC, they use our RDNA 2 architecture. And that very same architecture can be found in the new Xbox and in the new PlayStation. So through that, we're making it easier for developers to be able to develop to one architecture that they can more easily port to these different solutions across the entire ecosystem. We're also able to democratize the technologies that we're introducing with this new architecture. For example, ray tracing, which is kind of the next evolution, major evolution in highly visual gaming graphics. We're putting that in our new desktop graphics cards that we launched today, but it's also in the new Xbox and the new PlayStation. So with the proliferation of gaming, the proliferation of cross-platform gameplay, we've organized the company and the different technologies that we're catering to the gaming space so that we can participate and help drive the entire ecosystem, not just one particular pocket of it, for example, all the while trying to make it easier for developers to also be able to bring their content to that end-to-end ecosystem.
Sure. And just to explain to anyone who doesn't have a deeper understanding, at the risk of oversimplifying, one of the reasons why AMD is in both the PlayStation and Xbox is that AMD makes both CPUs, the core processing units, the core of these machines, and also the graphics side. And their main competitors in those businesses, Intel and NVIDIA, don't really play in the other side. So AMD is positioned to be able to help the console makers integrate both the CPU and GPU side. Now, Samantha, talk about the content. I actually grew up in this house in upstate New York playing EA games, literally running outside to get the UPS to pick up games like The Bard's Tale, like Archon. And so EA is really, over decades, really been a hallmark of content development for this industry. Samantha, what are you seeing these days, and how is EA taking advantage of the new trends?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the interesting trends that I think is really pertinent is the rise of what I'll call the amateur developer, which is the rise of customization and user-generated content. And so our world, and Frederick will, I'm sure, talk more about this, but it's unbelievable what our children can create these days and what they can release. The success of Adopt Me or Jailbreak or other UGC mods in some of these platforms is I think over time is really going to change the face of our industry. And in my own portfolio and as part of EA, Maxis has been doing this for years. And The Sims is a huge platform for people to self-express, for them to try new things out. And just as a statistic for you, over the past 5 years, we've created about 5,000 pieces of individual clothing, which is a ton of customization for our players. But if you look at one of our biggest UGC sites, they've created 39,000 pieces in that same period of time. Like, there's just no way as a professional development house we can keep up with our players, and we don't even do a very good job of supporting them. Like, imagine if we could embrace that more in the future and really give the power to the players. I think it's a very powerful trend.
And coming to Vivek, I mean, this idea of the consumer not just being a consumer but a participant in the gaming ecosystem and culture is obviously core to what you're doing. So tell us a little bit about your perspective of that.
Yeah, and again, thank you, Seth and Protocol, for having all of us here. It feels great, to be part of this panel because it shows the massive opportunity and diversity in all of us and the approaches we're taking. Facebook. I'll steal James's line here, which is so great. Facebook is like the gaming company you never thought of, or if you thought of it, it was from the days where you were spamming your friends with Farmville invites. So we're happy to be back in the game, no pun intended. We've been in this for a long time. The trend that we're spotting now, and the reason why we're reinvesting back in gaming in a big way is, this is, I think, Daniel, you mentioned this pretty spot on, which is the world has shifted and it has become so obvious that the place to connect with your friends, find new interest groups, is online in gaming. And in no small part, Facebook, I think, has been a part of that earlier on, a decade ago. The massive expansion from the 40 million PC gamers to all of a sudden you get to 400 million players on web. We want to get back to that stage. Facebook has always been the place where things become a little bit more mass market. And so we see our role and responsibility to helping developers reach audiences they might never have reached before. At this point, we can measure around 700 million people just on Facebook alone that play games or watch games or hang out in a Facebook gaming group. And out of those, around 380 million are playing games of some sort on Facebook. And I wouldn't say that we have the massive catalog with depth gameplay today. And so you can imagine the mid-core to casual, the expansion that's really a huge opportunity as technologies like cloud and others accelerate, because now you can reach so many more people. The thing that I think is ultimately the biggest trend of all in all of this is the fact that more and more people are realizing that gaming is way beyond the actual content. And the adjacent technologies and the adjacent categories that have been invented by gaming, that's also something, adding on to what Samantha was saying, is going way beyond what anybody imagined. Discord is just a phenomena that I think this week they might have put out some more cool numbers that everybody should check out. But they might be one of the biggest sites on the internet for communities at this point, and it started as a gaming company. It is just brilliant. So the social connection that comes as a part of gaming and creating these new industrial complexes that are on the side as adjacencies is what we're excited about, and we want to play a part in, as well as bringing people together into really a worldwide phenomena.
Yeah, I have to admit that I had to close Discord completely before starting this panel because I never know when I'm going to explode with various alerts. So Frederic, you've been teed up here by a number of the other panelists. So please do tell us your perspective and a bit about Manticore, please.
Thank you very much. And I want to say it's a fantastic setup. And I also want to admit that we didn't pay anybody on the panel to say all the great things that leads to what I'm going to say next, right? So you ask, what are the biggest trends in gaming? Obviously, I agree with almost whatever folks said before. I think first and foremost, gaming is absolutely exploding on all fronts, right? Not just with COVID, not just with numbers. We have new players, new games, new companies, new paradigms. I mean, the best IPOs this year are Unity and probably soon Roblox on Epic. I mean, this is amazing, right? Gaming companies couldn't go IPO before, right? I think the second thing is obviously the rise of UGC and games as platforms, not just as games as service. That's kind of boring now. We've been talking about that for 15 years. Okay, let's get over that. But games as these dynamic social worlds that blur the lines between, you know, what used to be very linear forms of entertainment, traditional games, and now fully dynamic and multiplayer social games. So not just games, but worlds. Obviously, you see Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite Creative. And I think the biggest trend is obviously what we're doing, right? Because we're working, I think, on the biggest opportunity in gaming today, a UGC multiverse, is the fact that gaming is much more open. You know, the big companies, some are on this panel, they don't get to define what games should be, the way they should be played, what the game should be, what shouldn't be played, what shouldn't be made. They don't define even who gets to make games, right? This is much more open now. You see the kids, our kids, my kids, playing Minecraft, playing Roblox, playing Fortnite Creative. And, you know, as an average person in the industry, sometimes there is a tendency to look down upon Roblox, to look down upon Facebook games 10 years ago. Guess what? Those are games. You don't get to define who plays these games, who makes these games. It's much more open, and that's exactly what we're doing, right? We're building this a large UGC multiverse where the line between players and creators is blurred because we are so drastically lowering the barriers to entry to create, to express your creativity, right? That's what Samantha was saying. Like today, all gamers want to express their creativity, their inventivity, not just by choosing an avatar and a look or whatever, but like by truly interacting with the people who make these games and also becoming a creator. So that's what we're doing. It's called Core. You can think about it a little bit like a mix between Twitch, YouTube, or Instagram, what they did for streaming video and photos. That's what we're doing for game creation with Core at Meticore.
You know, one of the many common threads that we get throughout these comments, and thank you all, is really reflecting the diversity of business models in this industry. And if you look back just over the last 40 years, I don't think you've seen many industries that have embraced just the variety of monetization and engagement models that gaming has. You know, going back to what you might call the pay-as-you-go model, which is quarters into the arcade machine, right? To a retail model where people spend, you know, a fair amount of money, $60, $70 more in other countries for a packaged product. Then moving into microtransactions, free to play, freemium, all these different, and of course the now subscriptions. And one of the main questions I want to ask all of you is not just which models we think are emerging, but why this industry in particular has found so many different ways to make money and build sustainable enterprises off of this form of entertainment. And on this, I'd like to start with Samantha, because EA really has leaned into a really wide variety of different monetization models, even right now. And so I'll open it up with you, Samantha, on this question on why this is such a fertile industry for different kinds of experimentation in business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important for us to offer different models because players want choice. I think more and more they want to have the right consumer value that feels right for them. Sometimes that might be a premium $60, $70 product. Sometimes it's a free product. Sometimes it's a lower priced product. It needs to fit the consumer value of whatever that product is offering. We're really pleased that we were able to add our EA Play subscription to Microsoft's Game Pass, and we're getting really great response from people. Again, they love having that option. And we have a lot of premium products, but we also recently launched Star Wars Squadrons as a lower priced product because we felt like that was the right value. The players were saying this felt about right. And we could have tried to add modes or beef it up artificially or make it into something it wasn't, but it just didn't feel right. And so again, it's about giving players choice and offering the right consumer value, the right price for what they believe the content is worth. And we're always going to support multiple models.
Daniel, you look like you want to jump in.
Yeah. Look, I think Samantha's spot on, and James mentioned it in his introductory remarks that us in the gaming business, because this is becoming so widely accepted, you know, if you think back just 5 years ago, the kinds of players who would play some of our deeply immersive games, these were hardcore gamers. But now you're getting to a world where you're getting to 100, 200, 300 million potential players, a billion potential players who are on the platform and want to interact. You have to find the right model for the right player. And as a business for us, it's imperative to understand that each player is different. And some may be actually more open to subscriptions, some may be a better candidate for in-app purchase versus an advertising opportunity. So because the universe has become so expansive, not only in the kinds of players, but also in the economic stature and their capability to pay, and also the development of payment infrastructure that is different in India than it is in Japan than it is here in the United States. We really have to evolve the various models to adapt to our local market, but also to adapt to the different kinds of players who are now on our platform, who, as I said, are now very, very diverse, and their expectations are very, very different from what happened even just a few years ago.
And I want to come to Vivek and pivot around on this, but you raised obviously an extremely interesting point, and you all do, about the segmentation, right? And in traditional culture, if we go back years, and even now to a certain extent, is this image of the gamer, if you will, as a monolithic, not only demographic, but also business, if you will. And of course, that's not true, because something like a third or 40% or half the world's population are playing games, and of course, the diversity of the world is reflected in the diversity of gamers. On a number of levels: content, marketing, distribution, monetization. And of course, the companies that we've seen over the last decade or so that have really become some of the best in the world, if not the best, of course, are companies like Facebook will come to, and also Google, Daniel's previous employer. But Vivek, on this issue of segmentation and really reaching a global audience, and then how the business, maybe on the advertising side as well, plays in, can you give us your perspective?
Totally. This is like a topic that's like near and dear to my heart. So if somebody like wants to flag me down while I'm mid-sentence, be like, "Hey, Vivek, you got this way off," please feel to interrupt. But like, this is, personally, I went through this transition when I moved to Facebook, because I came from Microsoft, where, now that I've left, I can say completely that they do not know, get, and offer advertising. And I was like, one of those folks who's like, look, like, man, it's just like this creepy thing, and advertising is like blah blah. But here's the thing: if you want to go take your thing to 2.5 to 3 billion people in the world, which are internet connected, you're gonna have to make stuff free. And you're gonna make it free, you're gonna have to figure out how people get paid. And there's only one known way in humankind today that we know how to do that, which is advertising. And like, it was a real transformation for me coming into the company, because I realized, like, actually, people vote with their feet. If they like something, they'll click on it. And if they like the thing they click on, and the person has done a good job merchandising to them, they'll go ahead and buy it. And that's how commerce is built. In fact, commerce is free to play, because I don't have to pay to get inside a store in order to go check out the goods. So I think it's like a very obvious model, where if you want to go take things to 2.5 to 3 billion people, you're going to have to change things to let window shoppers come in and maybe play the entire game. But the quality of like that conversion ends up differentiating the developers. And we've seen some amazing folks, like Fortnite has done an amazing job, being able to merchandise across platform, convince so many people to come back over and over again, have a free-to-play model, and be able to convert downstream without even getting into the advertising model. But it's the same concept. So I think like one of the things that I really find fascinating in our business is that a lot of the independent developers are actually making more money through advertising than you might ever believe. And I think that's one of the strengths of our situation today as this expansion goes on. It's like, I think a lot of people will make more money through this free-to-play model than we believe. And a lot of folks that are independent and mid developers will make a lot more money this way. So I feel like we have a responsibility to offer that as one of the ways to make money for developers as we go forward across all of our companies.
Yeah, I'm going to bring this around to Frederic in just a moment here, because what you're mentioning is obviously super important, because one of the tensions, of course, though, that people should understand is a bit creative. And that for the player, the question is, how do we make a free-to-play or advertising-driven experience actually still feel like a game they want to play? And there's a real fine line there, right? And we see a huge variety of monetization in terms of how aggressive they are. And that's fine, but it's just one of the things that needs to be handled. And I'm going to pivot now to a couple of questions, or two questions on the same area from the Q&A, which does follow up on this exact area. We have two separate questions on in-game economies and in-game assets, and I'm going to kind of conflate them. The first question reads, what are the panelists' thoughts on the economy of in-game assets? Lots of players spend considerable amounts of cash on game artifacts like skins, as Vivek mentioned. Is there a consumer demand to exchange these assets either for other game assets across games or convert them into other sorts of assets out of game? And then the complementary separate question is, how are companies thinking about the development of in-game economies where users can trade their digital assets directly with one another? And do we think that an economy can grow over there that be bigger than one game with the portability of Fortnite assets, perhaps to other games? Frederic, let's open up with you, because I know this is something you've thought a lot about.
Yeah, it's basically at the core of what we're doing, pun intended. You know, core is a couple of things, right? It's a UGC multiverse. So on the one hand, for the creators, it's a completely open, free to create, free to use tool platform to create any form of games, publish them. But core is also an economic platform. We, of course, on the one hand, want to bring new folks to gaming, bring a new generation of creators like never before, just like Twitch and YouTube did for streaming and video. We also want to build an economic platform where the creators make lots of money. And ultimately, we're all at the service of the players, as I think Vivek mentioned. The players choose, right? We're all kind of competing for their attention and sometimes, of course, their money. But at the end of the day, it's what is the service, what is the value you're creating for the players that will make them stay and come back. And the way we've decided to go about it is by drastically lowering all the barriers for creators, right? So it's extremely easy to make games in core. It's also extremely easy in just a few seconds to publish these games. But it's so very easy for you to manage your economic model in any way you want. In a few weeks, we're about to release something pretty big that I cannot fully mention, but that will be a complete game changer for the industry, where we are giving almost entirely the power to the creators to decide how they want to not just make their games, create their games, interact with the community, but also monetize their games. And I think that's probably still one of the most understated topic in the industry. When you look at what is happening in Minecraft or Roblox, I think it's just the beginning. Minecraft and Roblox, not only have you seen amazing new games that didn't exist before, that were completely created, invented, etc., but you've also seen new ways to operate these games, new ways to make money with these games, and that's basically what we're doing also in essence, but at a much different level, because our target is really a super high quality game, super high quality gameplay. So it's very different from Minecraft and Roblox in so many ways. So that is one path I see for the industry, and probably the biggest opportunity today, which is give the tools of creativity, but also of monetization,
Sure,
and of economic power to the creators and in turn the players.
Certainly. And just to wrap up on this, I want to bring it back to Samantha, because we have another question from the chat that actually plays right into this, which is a bit of an organizational question that I'm sure Samantha has a lot of experience with, which is, how do you think about developing games for these various kinds of models, AAA, subscription, free-to-play, live services? And as an executive, could there be studios that develop different kinds of games specifically for different kinds of monetization? Or do you have the studios sort of build the game first and then figure out the monetization later, and then these have to work together? So how do you think about that?
Yeah, the monetization and the game are often tied together, and it's all tied back to the different player types that we've talked about, and different players have different needs. And so different studios benefit from having specializations. I love BioWare games. I enjoy immersing myself in that fantasy world that they create. And that is a one type of player, which is very different than someone who plays The Sims. And some people will play both. but it's important that we have different business models that match the different styles of games that our developers are making. And underneath all of that is technology and tools, and the product pipelines that we use is one of the most important things, and I think is a real area for innovation. It's getting more and more expensive to make content. So how can we make content faster that's at better quality with more variety? That's tough.
Yeah, and that's
sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, it's a perfect jumping off point, because obviously we could spend the next 3 hours talking about business models, or the next 3 days. But sadly, we only have till the top of the hour. But you do mention the role of changing technology, Samantha, and I want to go to a slightly different sort of area and start with Frank on the technology side. This is one of these industries where we all know that there's incredible amounts of different kinds of technology propelling the experience. But of course, at the end of the day, for the end user, the technology isn't what's important. What's important is how the technology informs the experience there, right? Frank, just from the point of view, from your point of view, can you tell us a little bit about sort of how you think, is it just better graphics, or is there more going on in terms of how technology is changing the overall gaming experience, if you will?
It's interesting. At first, and a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, about over 20 years ago or so, when the concept of a gaming computer was a pretty foreign concept, and games started to make their way over to the computer, performance was kind of the key value proposition that differentiated the devices from all other gaming devices that were out there. And it seemed like the better your graphics were as a game, everybody was in a graphics race in a lot of ways. And it was always a performance first message that would differentiate, and even consoles at the same time. You remember 8-bit consoles, 16-bit, 32-bit, and the whole bit war and how that translated to graphics. But over time, it's changed a lot. When you look at some of the most popular played games out there in the world right now, they aren't all necessarily the most high fidelity graphics games that exist out there. You have a lot of very low fidelity games that are extremely, extremely popular. And I think it's been around really entertainment that has kind of dominated now which games are going to succeed more than anything. And then, of course, how the pricing model and everything, like Samantha was talking about, is matched to the type of entertainment that it offers and the economic model that supports it. But what's really exciting is how the gaming experience has evolved so much over time as well, and how we've been able to cater to that evolution. So, for example, gaming started originally on these really big, heavy consoles, if you will, and these big, heavy arcade machines and these big and heavy PCs. And over time, we've been shrinking those down to notebook form factors, eventually thin and light form factors, into mobile phones as well. So it's now like the hardware experience in a lot of ways is a key factor in the content experience. When I'm playing, for example, a AAA game that's highly visual, like Squadrons, and I am playing a lot of Squadrons right now, I want to play that on my curved, large screen desktop setup at my home with my joystick and the whole setup, right? But I can't really replicate that experience when I'm traveling and I'm on a laptop. So I don't play Squadrons when I'm traveling on a laptop. Instead, I play Overwatch, and that's legit. You can check my account, Daniel. I've got hundreds of hours on it. So because Overwatch is it's a good fidelity game in terms of its graphics. It's not crazy high fidelity that it runs at 30 frames per second on a laptop. I can actually get really good 150 frames per second on a laptop. So now, like, my travel game and my travel experience of gaming is a first-person shooter that runs really well on my laptop that I can even run on battery, which I successfully do. So now I'm playing this game anywhere and everywhere that I want to go play it, outside of being able to play it on a handheld. But when I'm at home and I want to turn the lights down and I want the complete immersive experience and I really want to transport my mind to a different place, that's where, I use my desktop, I use my big widescreen monitor. So performance is a key attribute now, but it's not the end all be all. There's form factor considerations, there's front of screen experience considerations, the immersiveness of a 15-inch screen versus a 34-inch curved screen versus VR, for example. They offer very different experiences. So I love how the content is still front and center and it's core to the experience, but how the hardware and the ecosystem around it is really delivering that content in its best in its best ability, and making the experience richer for however the user wants to use it in that context.
You're so right. I mean, I'm a core PC gamer, as it were, and I just spent a lot of money on a new gaming PC, precisely to get some of the issues that you're talking about. But there is a countervailing thought here, right? And I want to start with Vivek, which is the C word, which is cloud. And cloud's a buzzword, and we don't sadly have time to really go into the details in terms of how cloud really is reshaping gaming in a lot of different ways, right? On the production side, distribution, models, content. But I did want to open it up with Vivek to talk us a little bit about how you see the impact of cloud, because one of the thoughts about cloud gaming is that perhaps it makes the local hardware a little bit less important on the processing side, maybe not. And I know that Facebook is really leaning into expanding its cloud capabilities. Obviously, you have your own private cloud, but now building a GPU-powered cloud to deliver more extensive gaming and marketing experiences. What's your perspective overall there, Vivek?
Yeah, I think this is the same sort of shift we saw with like enterprise software, where you needed to have. I think Frank, you did a awesome job narrating this journey, repeating that back in terms of what shift we've seen for cloud for other industries. I remember 15 years ago when I was part of the team that was building what is now known as Office 365. I remember so many executives inside the company and outside the company we'd go talk to sell this thing, being like, are you crazy? Nobody can do as good of a job running email software as we can in our own servers when we can see it and the lights are blinking on and off. And it's here we are 10 years later and nobody does that anymore. So I think people are underestimating the ability for highly attuned, highly aggregated cloud services to dramatically shift development costs. I think Samantha is exactly right. It might not show up as everything is going to be rendered down to a device. I don't think that's true, but so much of the processing around AI, the different business models, the friend sharing, all of that stuff is going to start migrating to the cloud in some way or another. From Facebook's perspective, we see this as a dramatic shift in terms of the depth of experience that you can provide on mobile phones in particular. So, I'd love to have, Frank, I'm surprised you're still traveling, by the way. It's I don't know how you're managing that, but if you are traveling, kudos. But I'd love to have you also have the option of playing, Overwatch on the phone, stream from a cloud. I think that's totally legit. And I think that's gonna be a possibility given some of the technological shifts that we're seeing. For Facebook, one of the things that we did was we didn't know what was real or not because the frothiness of this topic, as you said, Seth. So we built it and we turned it on and we didn't tell people. And upwards of 200,000 people were playing without knowing that it was a cloud offering. And we had a survey pop up every single time after the game saying, hey, how would you rate this game in terms of graphics, whatever? And the average was 4.5 out of 5, and 4.5 being good. So being a data-driven company, I think the people have spoken. I think there's not going to be much of an opposition in terms of the actual use of the products that are delivered through cloud. But I think what will happen is just the same way everywhere else, different facets of that processing will move to the cloud. It might be full rendering, like what we're delivering for mobile phones. It might be partial for AI models, but it is going to happen. It is going to be an explosion of opportunity for everybody.
And I got to ask Daniel to jump in here, or already unmuted himself. Coming from Google, and we won't ask you to answer for their strategy, but obviously now helping run Activision Blizzard, your perspective on cloud general.
Yeah, look, I experienced that exact same thing that Vivek was talking about. When we were at Google moving to the Android platform, and there were all these naysayers who said, look, what can you do with a mobile phone? It's for phones, okay? It's for taking pictures. And you knew that the computing power was going to evolve more and more, and that more of the computational capabilities would have to be in the cloud in order to really make the phone functional. So I do think that this is clearly going to be a way of the future. And again, just going back to what James said in the very beginning, as we start thinking about on the fly understanding of consumer behavior and delivering the right content, the right monetization opportunity, the right upsell opportunity at the right time, I think it is important to have that level of immediacy and number crunching that I think the cloud enables. We're still far away from that. I think the investments that we're making in console and PC and the game rendering that we have on the mobile phone is still going to be pervasive for the time being. But look, we're very excited about what cloud and cloud computing can do. If anything, if it can bring the price of the machine or the access device down, I mean, again, you saw what happened with the mobile phone. It can really expand the audience that we can target.
Absolutely right. And sadly, we only have a few minutes left. And I want to just give a shout out to the chat because you were asking so many amazing questions that are really important and interesting that we sadly won't have time to get to on this panel, perhaps on the next protocol gaming panel. But to touch on a bunch of the panelists are talking about here with mobile and different platforms, what many people who aren't in this industry may not understand is that when we talk about 160 billion, 180, 200 billion, I mean, the rough pie in this industry is about half of it is mobile. Mobile is the biggest part of this industry. And then the other half is, depending on roughly 25 and 25%, little shifts there between console and PC, depending on how you think about it. I guess the question, just to go around quickly around the panel, I guess we'll start with Frederic, is do we expect to see any major shifts in that overall platform pie, if you will, over time, over the next few years, between mobile, PC, and console?
It's a very good question. It's the eternal question in our industry, right? Like people were giving PC as dead or dying 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. Likewise with consoles, right? Some people can make the case, well, the console revolution is over, like consoles are boring, etc. And then you see every new console generation, a new explosion of interest. And I think at the end of the day, it's all about what you folks talked about earlier. It's all about access. It's all about distribution. It's all about choices for consumers. And the PC is stronger than ever. Mobile is booming. This console, every new console generation, I try to be bored with it. Say, oh, you know what? It's just better hardware. And then inevitably, I get so excited. I end up buying not just the two consoles, but several generations within the generation of the console. So that is, I think, what's ultimately so exciting, that it's more access, more choices for the consumers. And also for the creators, for also the people who are making these games and are trying to find a way to differentiate themselves in this ecosystem and find new ways to distribute their games, right? I mean, we keep talking about the social gaming revolution 10 years ago. I think that was so wonderful, where you had this, immediate access to the Facebook players with new games, new creators, and new players. So I don't exactly numerically how the breakdown will change, but I will respond maybe ultimately in a very simple way. I think it's all going to keep growing. PC is growing, mobile is growing, etc., and maybe even VR. Who knows at some point.
Vivek, your perspective on platforms, if you will.
Yeah, I think people will end up. So if we all believe that this gaming expansion is going to keep on continuing across everybody on Earth, then you have to believe that mobile, being the default device, is going to keep growing, and it's probably going to be a larger share than others. And it doesn't mean the other platforms are not important, they're not cool, like Frederic said. They are. But like the simple fact of the matter is, I think actually Samantha or Daniel brought this point up earlier, which is to say, like, when you go around the world, like people, this is their only device in many cases. And so you have to cater to them. I suspect what's going to happen is even the folks that are on consoles and PCs will end up double dipping into the mobile phones, because there's going to be sets of games that are just beautiful and fine there. So I think it's going to be 2/3 mobile, 1/3 PC and others.
Understood. Frank, your perspective.
Well, we're in all the devices, so we're happy either way. But I don't really look at the mix as much as I look at all categories growing. When I look at the value proposition of gaming, I find it to be the absolute best ROI entertainment you can possibly get. You pay a little bit of money for a game, you get hours upon hours upon hours of entertainment and enjoyment. Your friends are along with you for the journey. It's something that, you know, transcends gender, geography, race, religion, family members, age, everything. You know, I play games with my 8 and my 10-year-old all the time, and it's a way that we connect and we have a great relationship, and we talk and we find common things to do together. And I can do that whether I'm on the road or I'm at home. So I think the value proposition, it's not just incredible, but it continues to get better, whether it be free to play games like we talked about, now cloud gaming continuing to grow, more games on mobile as more devices proliferate. So I think all the boats are going to come up, and I think everybody's going to prosper in that situation. So, you know, the mix as to whether mobile ends up being played on more or desktop or console, there's so many ways you can cut it. Like, you know, I could probably agree with Vivek that maybe 2/3 of games will be played on mobile, but then you start getting into revenue, and then you start getting into hours played, and then you start getting into all these other metrics, and then they start swinging in other directions, you know? So I think the most important thing that I think about is how are we innovating as an industry? How are we listening to the customer? How are we bringing them continuously unique economic models, unique form factors, unique stories and content, and keeping it interesting and keeping it the best form of entertainment that exists out there? And I think if we do that, as we mostly have for the last 40, 50 years, everyone's going to thrive in this ecosystem.
And of course, both Activision, Blizzard, and EA spend a lot of time thinking about these and making strategic investments. Daniel, your thoughts?
Yeah, I fundamentally agree with what Frank said. We have to make sure that we pair our great content creation with the technology that's available on whichever platform and make it accessible. So we are bringing our epic entertainment to be on whatever platform, or whichever best platform it may be. Right now, console, PC, and the evolution of mobile is definitely there. I think the evolution of where cloud and streaming will eventually be is an opportunity. But our big bets are not one versus the other. We're really placing fundamental big bets, as you've seen with our recent launch of Call of Duty. And we have Shadowlands coming up next week from the Warcraft team. They are PC, they are console, and mobile will continue to be a new area of investment for us. We have to bring the epic entertainment to where the players want to be, and I think that's what we will continue investing in.
Samantha?
Daniel was very eloquent. We create interactive entertainment, and our jobs are to align that entertainment with the best possible experience on whatever hardware makes the most sense to fit what that game is trying to be. And I want to be everywhere that players are. I want to give them the opportunity to play these amazing experiences on the device that fits the best for them. And I think that's going to become more and more ubiquitous. You're going to see more and more blending where the hardware almost fades away. It's the experience itself that is at the forefront.
And I'm going to keep it with you, Samantha. We're going to wrap up right here, but I have one last little thing. I'm going to ambush you all. We saw the nominees for the Game Awards just came out a couple hours ago. Shout out to Jeff Keighley for making that a big event in this industry. But the question just for each of you real quick, you're not allowed to mention a game from your own company, but what have you been playing most this year? And we'll wrap up with that. Samantha?
I play everything. It's impossible to say. I'm playing Valhalla now, which is great, but honestly, I was really impressed with Genshin Impact. People in our industry that haven't played Genshin should go out and play it and should think, wow, okay. I play everything.
Frederic, what are you playing?
I'm a huge first-person shooter player, so I play lots of Apex. I love Apex. I think it's one of the best games ever made. Still play lots of Fortnite, of course. Still love it. And once in a while, of course, lots of games on core, but you said we cannot mention those. But I have to say I'm missing MMOs, and on core we have lots of MMOs, and I've been playing lots of those instead of the big WoW type MMOs. So Apex, Fortnite, and MMOs on core.
Daniel, what are you playing? Not from your company.
Oh, so not Overwatch and not Call of Duty, not World of Warcraft.
Sorry, no.
No. I've actually been a little bit addicted, I have to admit, to Fall Guys, and I've been playing a fair amount of Fall Guys recently and testing that model out.
Have you won?
I will not admit.
Vivek, what are you playing?
So I'll cheat because we don't make any games. We're largely platforms. I'll cheat and I'll say what we played yesterday. We played for our team offsite. We did no shop talk, no work talk. We played Jeopardy and we played Among Us. And I have to say, my team kept voting me off every single time, regardless of not I was an imposter. So I mean, there must be something to this game.
That's how it works. And Frank, please, the last word here. What are you playing?
Well, like I said, a lot of squadrons. I've been playing Overwatch for 3 years now. But on my desktop, I also have Rise of Nations. This is a flash to the past. I mean, I love that game. Now that my 10-year-old is 10 years old, he can understand the concept of the game. So I've been playing that with him lately. And they're hardcore Fortnite. So sometimes I join their world and play some Fortnite with them as well.
Thanks to all of you. I think we're out of time. Thanks to all 5 of you. This has been fantastic. Thanks again to Microsoft and Azure for sponsoring. And thanks to Protocol for hosting the whole event. And most important, thanks to all of you to come and participate in our panel today. And hopefully we'll see you on the next one. Please do sign up for the Protocol Gaming newsletter and check out Protocol in general, some of the smartest tech coverage you can find out there these days. Have a great day.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.